Hello and welcome once again to the Parent Playing Video Games Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Blast Corps on the Nintendo 64. This one was a tricky one, for sure. I had a little bit of a challenge trying to actually play it this time around. Originally my plan was to emulate it. I have my little, Anbernic handheld emulation thinger, but it doesn't really do N64 games super well. Some it does, some it doesn't. Same with PlayStation 1. It can do some, like Symphony Night works really well. Some 3D stuff, a little bit tricky. 3D stuff is hard for it. It's a couple years old, maybe. But, so I had a little bit of trouble trying to emulate it, and then I'm like, I can play it on my laptop. Hey, my laptop has lots of power. Nope, same issues. So I actually ended up pulling out my N64, pulling the bin from underneath my bed of all my games, all my carts, and I plugged it into... So, this is interesting. My TV doesn't actually have the composite connectors, that red, yellow, white that the N64 uses. So I actually have, from my streaming days of sorts, to hook up my Super Nintendo, which uses the exact same connectors, I have a tiny little USB capture card thing. It is interesting to set up, to say the least. You have to get the drivers from a Japanese website, so I always have to look up the instructions for it, because someone has kind of... almost done a translation. So, I get the drivers. I use a little application called Amarek TV. Plug it all in. Plug the controller in. Put the card in. Everything's on my desk here. It's actually kind of a mess. And, works flawlessly, actually. The input delay is not perceptible, at least in my opinion. So, I, as I said, wasn't able to play it downstairs kind of thing in front of the TV or anything like that, but I still got the job done. So obviously I've been playing Blast Corps. Also things that I've been playing, I've been continuing a little bit to do the Super Metroid map randos. Did a couple more. I'm really enjoying that because on the other randomizers I always felt like I never finished them. I started them and then I kind of just didn't go much further with them. I wasn't really able to beat them, kind of thing. So the map rando's handy because I'm actually pretty good at beating those ones. Pretty happy about that. As I said, Blast Corps is in there. I also started playing Crosscode again, and I don't know if I've mentioned it before. Crosscode is a really, really good action RPG. And what I actually did was I kind of flipped a coin of sorts. And I said, I rolled a dice. So I said anything on one side was going to be Crosscode, and if anything on the other side, the other half of them was going to be Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was interested in playing both. Again, I've beaten both before. I'm on my sort of second run through them, and I decided to say, you know what, I want to pick one of them up. And I'll let fate decide, kind of thing. So the winner was Crosscode. So I beat the game. I started playing the DLC, having a lot of fun with it. It's a really, really, really good game. And then I kind of just stopped. With all the news that's come out recently, and I mean news about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that part 3 of the remake stuff. Was it Square Enix on their Final Fantasy VII account? They were actually tweeting once a day, and it was a snippet of information. And everyone, a couple of us at work, several people, thousands, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands, were super excited about this. And they were teasing it. And I think on the second or third one, the kind of, theory of sorts came out that the final one was going to be on the first day of Summer Games Fest. So that was true. And me and one of the guys at work, our theory was going to be like, the tweet will have no real information other than stay tuned or watch Summer Games Fest or here's the trailer or something like that. And it was the case. It's like there'll be more information revealed soon. And then, that tweet was at 7 a.m. my time. And I think Summer Games Fest started at like 2-ish or 1, something like that. And yeah, that was the kind of the finale of Summer Games Fest was a bigger reveal trailer. Showed some more gameplay, some more areas, a little bit more of the story, and then gave us that early 2024 release. So very excited about that, and that kind of pushed me, so to speak, over the edge to be like, okay, I'm gonna start playing Remake again. So I started playing that again, and to be honest with you, I think I played it for 2 hours, and again, trying to just like get back into it, figure out the controls, all that stuff, and then there was an announcement about Final Fantasy 16. And then they announced a demo was going to drop. And that happened on Monday, Tuesday? Yesterday, yeah. Tuesday. And, no, today's Tuesday. But whatever day it was, the 12th. Got that and started playing that. And, man, that is good. I'm very excited for that. I was almost certain I was going to pick it up on day one. I'm not going to pre-order it because I don't want to pre-order games. I'll just buy it when it comes out. But yeah, when I played that, I was a little bit concerned about the combat itself, and that the big thing is that when I played Final Fantasy 15, the combat in that I was not super keen on. I really had a hard time with that. Even 20 plus hours into the game on the easiest difficulty, I still was having a hard time with just regular fights. So when the Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, I was concerned, but the combat on that did a really good job. I'd say 90% of the time I was pretty good with it, not always. And then same thing with this, Final Fantasy 16. We know it's an action game, more of the classic Final Fantasy 4, 6 kind of like, active turn battle. And so I was not necessarily hesitant. I was still very confident I was going to buy the game, but I was, still concerned about the combat. So yeah, played the demo, started up last night. Man, they are good fights. The regular fights are one thing, but I got through a couple of I don't know if they're bosses or mini bosses or just bigger enemies, but they were really cool fights, very in-depth, engaging, not overly challenging, but also challenging, if that makes sense. A good challenge, I guess. But yeah, had a lot of fun with that. And hoping to play more of that tonight or not, but I'm not sure. The game does come out in 10 days on the 23rd, and this is on the 13th that I'm recording this. So, as I said, I'm very, very, very excited for that. Let's think, because I think 15 came out, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe. I wasn't super excited for that. I didn't really, it looked neat, but I don't remember being really excited for it. Of course, 7 Remake, I got very excited when we saw that coming out. And I haven't really been this excited for a mainline Final Fantasy. And I want to say, I was excited for 13, but we all know how that went. So it's been a very, very long time. So I'm really excited. It looks like it's going to turn out real good. So now let's get to the meat of our episode. We're going to be talking about Blast Corps. I didn't mention it in the intro, but if this is your first time, kind of what we do on the podcast here is we're going to go over the game of question, or in this case, it's Blast Corps. We're going to go over the gameplay, talk about the story, levels, vehicles in this game. We're going to touch on the music, one of my favorite parts of most video games. We're also going to talk about the time commitment. Now, as a parent, this is quite important. You don't want to be sinking 300 hours into a game, or maybe you do, but you want to be aware of it kind of thing. We're also going to touch on a kiddable category of sorts. This is something I've come up with, kind of making it up as I go. We'll see how it goes this episode. And then, of course, we're going to have our little conclusion. We're going to rate the game, see where it lives in my mind. So as I had mentioned, the first thing we'll be touching is the gameplay. So we'll start with the story, and it's a doozy. So the simplest way to put it is there's a runaway nuclear missile, 2 of them in fact, on a kind of like a big old flatbed truck. that started leaking radiation, and by default, it said, oh, okay, cool, I'm going to go to the demolition site. And very much, what is it, the phrase, as the crows flies kind of thing? Like, it's just going to head in that direction. It doesn't care that there's, like, cities and buildings and farms in the way. It's just going to head that direction. Your job is to clear a path. I mean, it is literally, that's all the story is. But, I mean, we'll get a little bit more into the depth of it. So you are the newest member of the Blast Corps, and you've been tasked with this assignment, which, to be honest with you, for a pretty much a demolition company, to say, hey, rookie, why don't you go ahead and, you know, make sure these nukes don't blow up anywhere. Kind of a rough first day on the job, let's put it that way. It may sound ridiculous, and that's okay because it is. Nothing wrong with that. But I've always wondered, you know, like, oh, it's gonna just head in this direction. Why don't they, like, you know, let out the tires? Or why doesn't it run out of gas? I mean, unless it's only going like 5 kilometers and this is just a really, really super dense, you know, area that it's in. But yeah, I've never really kind of understood why there's so many things that could be done before you get to let's demolish this whole city. Or, I mean, the level select area is a planet. Somehow it goes over water as well. Again, it doesn't need to make sense. It's fun. It's all good. I also kind of think it's a, like, you know, the movie Speed. You know, can't go below, what is it, 50 miles an hour or something, or the bus blows up. So they just go and go and go. It's like Speed plus a nuke. And they said, you know what? We've thought about it for about 9 seconds. It said, we just got to demolish everything in its path. That's all it is. We got to get her done. It's great. I love it. It is a lot of fun. It's a challenging game, but it is a lot of fun. And what better way to demolish everything in your path than have a handful of different unique vehicles that are, I suppose, demolition vehicles? In all honesty, the first one, and we're going to go through them, but the first one is, I would say, the only one that is a vehicle designed to demolish in the conventional sense. It's called a ramdozer. It's a bulldozer that you ram into things. I mean, yeah, of course it's going to take out buildings. And, you know, I was just thinking about it. The scale of the ramdozer, it is massive. Like, I don't know, in Alberta here, up north, we have the oil sands. And they have these, if you ever look it up, the dump trucks that they use are insane. Like, the wheels are, I want to say, I don't know, 20 plus feet in diameter, at least, is what it seems like whenever I see pictures. Like, these things are multiple times the size of a house. Like, this dump truck is kind of like one of those. I mean, let's be honest, that would be really cool to drive and just demolish buildings. Not in real life, I swear. Just in the game. So, that one's cool. You also, this one, I mean, all of them can do this, but this one is much easier. It can push giant TNT boxes. Now, when you tap them, they start click, 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 and then boom. It counts down a timer. So, again, these things are huge. They're as big as a house. And you're pushing it around to push into bigger buildings that can't be demolished with the ramdozer kind of thing. The next one on the list is Backlash. This is a dump truck. And it is the most infuriatingly difficult vehicle in this game. Tenfold, like by far. The reason being is that the way this works is you have to drift it, and when you hit with the tail end of the dump truck, like the actual dump truck bit, what is that called? It's called the bed of the truck. You hit it with that. That's what demolishes the buildings. I am so incredibly bad with this vehicle. Is that these are the levels that I get frustrated and maybe not, but probably rage quit. So, yeah, I hate the dump truck. I actually read something recently that the primary developer of the game he was actually really good with the dump truck, and he didn't understand why no one else was good at it on the team. Like the team of, I think it was 4 or 5 people originally, which, I mean, let's take a moment. 4 or 5 people to make a full game. And I think it went up to 7 or 9 at some point, maybe when they brought in some people from music and things like that. But that's insane. Nonetheless, the primary developer is like, hey, I'm really good at this. That's probably why it's in the game the way it is, because he was one of 4 people, and he's like, well, just do it. Next one, we have Skyfall. It's like a little dune buggy with a booster. Now, this one, the primary design of this is not to ram into things, but if you get air off a ramp or some bumps, as long as the vehicle is kind of bumping around, it does massive damage. Like, you can launch this thing into a building from above, and it'll just take it out. So that one's fun because it's fast. It's, zoom kind of thing, and then it go boost. We have Thunderfist next, which is kind of like a giant Gundam-like robot. And it has one arm. I'll explain that in a second. There's apparently a natural reason for it. So what you do is you roll, and this thing is, as I said, like Gundam, like giant, many, many stories high. You roll towards buildings, and if you time it right with the roll, as long as you're not too late on the roll, you roll and it rolls into a building, it'll do a big uppercut. So that one I remember having a hard time before, but I actually didn't find it too bad this time around. I kind of got that pattern figured out. But the reason it only has one arm is because when they were developing it, they actually ran out of polygons. And it's not like, oh, there's a finite amount. It's kind of like more of a, well, the N64 could only produce X amount of polygons and work with them at a time. And because it's the character model, that's a little bit more complex than a building or even the truck or the background. The background is fairly flat, right? A polygon will make all those different, 3-dimensional shapes. So they actually didn't have enough resources to make with both arms. And really neat way to kind of come up with a solution is just like, well, it just has one arm, that's fine. It doesn't need both arms in the gameplay. After Thunderfist, we have Cyclone Suit, kind of similar, not as big, and same. It's kind of the same method, is that you do a somersault instead of a roll. And you do a somersault, and it kind of is like, almost if you think of like a gymnast on the giant square flat mat that's bouncy, and they do the boing, 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 and they do all those flips. If you hit the building right, this one will do all the flips going through it. Smaller, so it can't take out as many big buildings, but you get the right vehicle for the level. It's not like you're going to go into a level and you choose them. Each level has a preset sort of selection of vehicles. So the third sort of robotic suit is J-Bomb, and this one is kind of a giant robot with big jetpacks, so you can fly to a point. It's not like you can fly forever, and you're not flying that quick. But when you're up there, you kind of do a ground pound from Mario 64. So you do a flip and then land down with your feet, take out any buildings below you. Very powerful. Honestly, I would say outside of the Ramdozer, probably the easiest one to use. I'm very good at that one. Not good at the Backlash. Good at Ramdozer and J-Bomb. What do we have here? So Ballista. Ballista is a motorcycle with rockets on it. Really cool maneuverability. The rockets, you do have a finite amount of ammo, but you can pick up them. I mean, I don't recall ever really having a troublesome time with the limited amount of ammo. But what's neat is that when you accelerate, you do a bit of a wheelie each time when you go, and then it settles down. So if you're kind of looking at a building and it's a short building and you accelerate and shoot your missiles, it actually can fly over. It actually changes the angle, which I don't remember it being a sort of a, if I want to hit this building, do the wheelie and shoot up high. I don't remember that. It was more of an annoyance than it was a way to, purposefully destroy something up high. It was just like a way that you had to, keep in mind that, hey, I can't accelerate and shoot, otherwise I'll probably shoot over. Lastly, on the main vehicles, we have Sideswipe. So this is like a big think of like a big semi-truck, like it's articulating, right? So you turn and it has a trailer that goes behind you. The trailer is pretty much two giant pistons on the side, and then when you activate it, it goes shoomp, like outside both, kind of like, pushing itself outwards. And this one, again, each level has the right vehicles. So the vehicles with sideswipe is that they'll be almost like two vehicles in parallel with each other, and you drive sideswipe right down the middle, and semi-perfect right down the middle. And then when you activate it, it actually hits both buildings at the same time. If you were to just do one then the other, you actually might not demolish them in time before the carrier gets to you or gets to that building. So I remembered that one being a bit tricky again. If you're a little bit too far one side or the other, yeah, you don't do enough damage. But again, like it's I like how it moves. It's very smooth. I don't know. It's like it's a very satisfying buttery smoothness. But yeah, not terrible. So anyway, so those are the main vehicles to destroy things. There are other vehicles in the game, such as a bunch of cars. There's like a muscle car, there's a van, and a few things like that. A couple other ones that are fast, but they can't. I mean, if they do any damage, it is so abysmally low. So it's so incredibly low that it's not useful in clearing out buildings for that carrier to get through. There's trains. Of course, the train is just there to transport things. It's not going to demolish anything. But on some levels, you may have to carry your ramdozer, across the level to get to the next part, because there's a giant bridge there. Well, you can't go across that because, sorry, it's not a bridge. It's a train bridge. There's a giant river that is going over. So something like that. Yeah, that's what the train is for. There's barges, which is the same sort of thing as the train. Instead of on a train track, it's just in a canal. So you go from A to B with this thing. And then there's cranes as well. So, for instance, you may have your vehicle will be on one side of a bridge, or not a bridge, sorry, train tracks or a river, and you have to park yourself on the crane, and then you actually get out walk around on foot. It's how you change your vehicles if needed. So you get out, go into the crane, you lift it up, you move it to the other place, you lower it, you get out, you get over there, and then carry on. Now, again, when you're doing all this, the main levels, and I'll get to that in a few minutes, is that there's these nukes, and they're just driving. So there's always an inherent timer, and it's a little stressful because you can see it. If you drive into the nukes, they blow up. If they hit something, they blow up. So even if you, let's say, change vehicles and you leave the ramdozer there, for instance, you go into the backlash and continue on, if that's in the way, it hits it. And I mean, that happened several times with other things, TNT boxes, where I'm just like, oh, really? Come on, man. So it's kind of funny. So you go into the different levels. You go into the different vehicles, whether it's the car, the bulldozer, the Skyfall, whatever it may be. You can kind of, go in and out of them. So let's talk a little bit about the levels. So as I had mentioned, I guess there's kind of two types of levels, let's call it. There's the carrier levels, which is the main sort of objective levels of the game. And then there are time trial levels. And when I looked it up, time trial levels is, to me, a weird way to put it, because they're not all about speediness kind of thing. So we'll start with the carrier levels. That's the main objective. That's the one where the nukes are on the truck and they're making their way, Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock style, towards everything. Clear out the way. That's your main objective. You get that done, then you can actually enter the level again after, because there are several secondary objectives that you can do. So we'll go through them. All the buildings destroyed. Pretty straightforward. Free anyone trapped inside buildings. Well, if you destroy all the buildings, you free everyone trapped inside. Not every building has people in it. So you could actually free everyone trapped inside buildings before destroying all the buildings. Like if you have 20 buildings, only 6 of them have people. Well, if you destroy those 6, you still have 14 left. Poof, there you go. And this one, I could not really figure out what these things are, but it's collect all RDUs, which stands for Radiation Dispersal Units. Again, I don't know what that means. We know that the game's story, I say that with this time slora. We know the story is about that, these nukes, they're on their way to be disposed, there's a radiation leak, and then it triggers its sort of, just head towards the destruction, demolition site, whatever it is. So I don't really know what these RDUs are. Maybe they're replaced because there's radiation being left behind, so these towns aren't covered in radiation, even though I'm demolishing them. I don't know. Either way, I think there's like 100 of them per level. And you just walk up to them and you go wong, wong, wong. They light up and then there you go. So as I said, you can maybe not all levels, and maybe if you're good enough, you can do everything. So destroy all the buildings, free everyone trapped inside the buildings, collect all the RDUs, while also doing that on that first through. When we get to the speedrun sections, I'm sure when the guys do the 100%, that's what they're going to try and aim to do, because the less time going into a level again, obviously is ideal, right? So, as I said, main objective, clearing the path. Secondary objective, those 3 things. And then you'll also get those time trial levels, which, as I said, I don't know if... I personally don't think that's the greatest name for them, because, and I'll tell you why. Sometimes they're races. Well, that makes sense. It's a time trial level. 4 laps around a little racetrack in your, your A-team van that you get, right? You choose the vehicle. Sometimes you just have to demolish certain buildings or collect all the RDUs. And that one, you know what? When I looked it up, I could not clearly see, but I bet you part of the reason why they're called time trial levels is that when you want to go demolish certain buildings or collect all the RDUs, it's within a certain time frame. You know what? That makes sense, doesn't it? Right? Otherwise, it's kind of just the same, but without the threat of the nuke. So actually, yeah, that's exactly what it is. You know what? We figured it out. We got there. The time trial levels I did find, though. And again, I'll be honest, I did not play through a huge chunk of this game this time around. I kind of just... I wanted to play it more, and I'll get into this later in that time commitment section, but I just... I was not too keen on just grinding the levels and pushing through really hard, just for the sake of it. Again, I'll explain that later, but this one, and I remember doing this way back on the game when I had it originally, or played it originally, sorry. You can unlock levels set on the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Neptune. It's really strange. Again, the story kind of goes even more off the rails somehow. So on the time trial levels, you can earn bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Now, platinum apparently is like the ultra hard. Like, they are very, very difficult. I vaguely remember probably doing like 1 or 2 back in the day. Yeah, that would be tough to get through and to grind that kind of thing for sure. Now let's talk about the music. So being that this is a Rare game, and I'm not saying Rare is unusual, but the developer is Rare. Rare? It doesn't matter. So a Rare game back on the N64. The music is awesome. They did such a good job, and Super Nintendo, like Donkey Kong Country. That was a Rare game. So the music composer for this game is Graham Norgate. And I did take a look, and he actually did compose music on a couple other really great games, with great games with great soundtracks, such as Killer Instinct, GoldenEye 007, hello, and Jet Force Gemini, which was known for its music. So, as I said, that classic Rare music, and it really does... It suits the game really well, and it's... I just don't really know how to put it other than it's just rare. It is very, very rare. So, on to the tracks, specifically. So, as you heard at the beginning of the episode, that's the intro music. As soon as you turn on the game, once you get past the logos, boom, that's the music. The next one we'll be taking a listen to is Time to Get Moving. On the previous episodes of the podcast, I feel the last couple, we've been loving this menu music, and this is no exception. This is a song, it's fun, it's upbeat, and it's when you're selecting a level. Super simple, right? Another one that I really like, which is pretty much the one that I always think of, it's called Destruction Hoedown. This one, as I said, whenever I think of Blast Corps, this is the song. It gets jammed into my head for the rest of the day, and I am okay with that. I hum it, I sing it, I whistle it. It's always there. Our third song is Bombs Away. This one, a little bit of a different, change up to Destruction Hoedown. It's a much more relaxed, smooth, peaceful song. It seems to be paired with the J-Bomb, which is that jetpack robot guy, for the flying levels, so it kind of goes hand in hand. It almost reminds me a little bit of Pilot Wing 64, the hang glider theme in that sense, just relaxed, calm, cool, so on. And then the OC remix this time around is not an OC remix at all. It's actually it is still a remix, just not OC remix. It's a remix by an artist of the name of Sky Martial Arts. It's called Blast Corps. Duh. And it has been on my playlist for over a decade for sure. I was looking through the listings, and Sky Martial Arts has some really, really cool, good video game remixes. Highly recommend you check out at least their YouTube channel. I know they're on Spotify for sure. But yeah, really, really great music. And it is a mix of several different songs. And if you get to the end of the song, there's a little bit of a bear and bird teaser in there. So highly recommend listening through that song. That'll be in the links in the description as well. Alrighty, so the time commitment. Now, this is where things get a little bit tricky, icky, iffy, something like that. The game's hard. Ain't no doubt about it. I specifically find it hard. It feels like a game you kind of have to grind. As I said earlier, I was playing it again for, getting a bit of a refresher for this episode. And while I was enjoying it, I think I stopped on the 8th or 10th time trying a specific level, and I know it wasn't one of the harder levels. I didn't get that far into it, to be honest with you. I probably put an hour and a half to 2 hours into it. We'll get onto the how long to beat in a few minutes here, but it takes longer than that. I wasn't near the end of the game, let's put it that way. It's kind of a love-hate. I love it because it is fun. It's got a really fun, weird story. The gameplay is... I don't even know of other gameplay that's like this, other than something like Rampage, which is where your monster's fighting and bashing things. I'm pretty sure. I shouldn't actually say that without knowing for sure. But I don't know of any other game where you are demolishing buildings with all sorts of vehicles to let a nuke through, or even anything close to that. So it is super unique in that sense. But again, that's the love part of it. The hate part is that it is very, very difficult. But it's kind of like, get good difficult. Like, if you practice it, you'll get good enough. And again, that's where the whole time commitment, as I say, as a parent playing this, I do have that limited amount of time. Do I want to spend half an hour on one level? No, not really. It isn't, it's something that I could see myself going back to every now and then. But that is also challenging because I'm playing on the N64. As I said, my desk is a mess right now just because it's still hooked up. There's wires everywhere because it's not normally sitting here. Now, if I had an area where I had the ability to leave it hooked up at all times, that would be much nicer. I would have it nice and neat, tidy, but I don't. I have a shelf off to my side with a whole bunch of my consoles, mainly for display purposes, and I pulled it out, hooked up with all the cables, and it works, don't get me wrong, but not the easiest to just leave out and I'll just play for an hour here or there kind of thing. So as I said, the love-hate. I love it because it's fun. hate is too strong. A love and dislike sometimes is because it is challenging, and it's a good and bad thing, right? It does have really good replayability, I think, because a couple things. One, you can play through the levels, those carrier levels, and that's it. That's the main story. Get through it, you're done. Now, if you want to go back and you want to do the time trials, or get all the RDUs, get all the destruction of all the buildings, find the secrets, right? There are some secret levels in there too, right? To get all that, well, yeah, you can go back through and get it. And of course, this is a really, really good game for the category, or certain category, for candidate, I should say, for speedrunning, because again, it is consistent. There's no, I don't think, any real RNG on where things are. When you get into the level, you start with the same vehicle as always. In that level, the carrier's on the same path, the buildings are in the same location, so you can grind it and practice it to get better and better and better and better, and then that's your replayability. But again, that kind of replayability isn't for everyone, right? Like I like the spice of life, I don't like being stuck into, well, I shouldn't say stuck. I don't like focusing on one game all the time. And funny enough, the one game that is kind of like that for me is Super Metroid randomizers, right? As I said before, earlier in the beginning, the math randomizers, they just suck me in, and I play those for hours and hours, and then I'm like, oh, I should want more. I want to play something different, right? I want to try something new, or, Final Fantasy 16. I want to play that when it comes out, right? So yeah, the replayability is there based on collecting everything, and then of course also, doing it faster if so inclined. On that how long to beat, the time frame of this one, actually pretty decent, especially for an N64 game. I always feel like they were fairly short, a good chunk of them. This one's 8.5 hours for the main story, and then completion is 15 hours. I want to say that, again, because I didn't play through it on the main story recently, it was many, many years ago, I want to say that it probably took me quite a lot longer than 8.5 hours to do the main story. But again, it's hard for me to remember that. I know I didn't do completion list. I know I didn't get all the items and all the RDUs and all the secrets because, well, I just know I didn't do that back then. So I would say I could see myself doing 10 to 12 hours on the main story, and then completionist, I have no clue because I've never done it, so I couldn't tell you. So on the speedrun side of things, we'll flip her around. We got two here, and any percent and 100%. There's not a huge variety on this one. It just changes mainly based on the platform that you're playing. So any percent, 100%, N64 US, N64 Japan, and then Xbox One. Because this game is part of the Rare Replay, which came out a couple years back. Well, probably more than that now, probably almost 10 years ago, where it was a collection of a bunch of Rare games, because now Microsoft owns Rare, so they kind of released them all, and to high praise. There was this on there, things like Conker's Bad Fur Day, and a bunch of others. We're not talking about Rare Replay, but for this one, the any percent, I focused on the N64 versions, because that's the one I played. So, any percent is by someone with the name of Grav, did in 24 minutes 34 seconds. The next one was only actually 4 seconds slower, so actually pretty close. So I watched some of this one, and some of the things that I noticed was that when you're in the game, and any percent, he's only doing the bare minimum to get to the end of the game, of course, right? So when you're playing the carrier levels, the C buttons, you can go left, right to rotate the camera around. You can go up to get zoomed in further, and you can go down to zoom all the way out. And then once you're all the way out, the next level that you go to, it actually zooms fully out and focuses kind of like a bird's eye view on the carrier. So you can do that and kind of see where it's going. It puts it at the bottom right corner, and then it says, okay, it's going towards the top left, and it kind of just stays with it. One thing I noticed right away, as Grav was destroying buildings, as soon as he would start hitting them and has that path, he would zoom all the way out, press down on the C button to go to the missile, which was it didn't have the view of the building he was demolishing. So that helped with lag. It doesn't lag that much, but as we all know, speed runs, those milliseconds counts. All those frames count. So if you can reduce the amount of lag as much as possible, that's going to make a big difference. And he was doing constantly, at least through the first few levels. Every time he went to go hit something, he would zoom out, it would go through, and you can hear it. He would know, because obviously he's been practicing a lot, been doing this a lot. So that's a way to kind of, reduce the lag and, just improve the your end time, your real time on the game. He did do a couple out of bounds tricks. He clipped through a bridge and kind of got across a level really quick. For a reason, I don't know exactly sure. That's one of the things is that's always tricky with a lot of speedruns is if it isn't someone who is very talkative, let's say, and I'll be honest, I didn't have the volume on even when I was watching grabs. I just had it kind of just on and I was watching it, not listening. When someone doesn't explain why they're doing this, why they're doing that, it makes it be like, what does that do, or why did you do that? So again, don't know why he did it, but I mean, obviously it's important to do. Otherwise, why would he do it? And then the skills on Backlash, I am envious of those skills. Man, it's like just drifting through everything like it was the Ramdozer. He just drove right through it, barely made a mistake. And I'm lucky to even get through a level with that. So, yeah. Now on the flip side of that, so any percent 24:34, 100% also by grab was 1 hour 32:47, which makes sense. A lot of games to go from the any percent to 100%, it's not that much longer because you just have to go through the game in the first place anyway. But this game, because there's so many extra levels that you would actually have to get, and you know what? I didn't. Let's take a quick look. I don't know what the actual not necessarily rules are, but the requirements for it. So collect all platinum medals. Holy crap! That's beefy. Yeah. Because again, like you in the games, you can find the secret. What's the word? Like the cars, discover them to use. I wasn't sure if the 100% included that, like finding everything. Or I guess, just in this case, it's the platinum medals, which, as I said, are brutally difficult kind of things. So, I'm just looking at the, I'm just looking at the rules. Like, it doesn't even allow emulators. So that is actually quite interesting that it doesn't. I mean, I think it's because the emulation is just so poor that it's not really, it's not worth it. It would be pointless to do it on an emulator kind of thing. Also, I just realized I never noticed this stat before. So for Blast Corps, there's 29 players, 237 runs, for a total of 99 hours, 21 minutes, and 23 seconds of total runtime. There's only 3 active players. Like for an example, on the 100%, Grav is at 132.47. The next one is Peach is at 139.48. Grav did theirs back in 2018. The one prior to that was 2012. That's a very long time ago. And there's nothing that was within a year. The last one was November of 2021. Sorry, I'm kind of going off track a little bit, but I'm really curious. So, Super Metroid, my favorite speedrunning game. Okay, I just wanted to see the stats. So there's 1,735 players, 12,100 runs. I don't know what boosters are, but the total runtime is 16,500 hours. That is wild. So, so that's a fun little thing. And, sorry, again, very distracted, very off topic. Oats and Goats, which is one of my favorite streamers, he just did a 40-minute, 40-second on any percent, 1 second behind the world record. He did that today. I might watch that later on today, so I'm gonna load that up and save that for later. Anyway, as I said, back to Blast Corps. So the speedruns on this one was really cool. the way Grav, again, it's always so cool seeing the skill that people have on it. So yeah, seeing his skill was, again, really, really cool. Yeah. So again, here's the thing. I would love to play more of the game, and seeing that is almost like, well, maybe I can follow some guides, learn how to do backlash better. But I don't know. It's tricky. I want to play more of it, but as I said, there's many other games that I think I would want to put kind of, a little bit higher on my priority list for the games that I can play with how much time I can play them. I just want to quickly mention a little bit of behind the scenes on the PPVG podcast. Is that between my categories, I generally have a bit of a pause. I maybe take a drink or whatever it may be, do a little adjustment here or there. And for this episode, as I mentioned in the music, the songs that I've chosen, every single time I paused, I've been whistling or humming Bombs Away. So, as I said, the music's great and it really gets stuck in there. So, I just wanted to mention that before we go on to our next category, which is the kiddable section. So, as I had mentioned, it's a challenging game. It's a hard game. Makes it a bit tricky because it makes it a harder sort of game to get into, a more rewarding game when you get better at it. However, it's kind of a one hand or the other kind of thing. Like, it's hard, but you can, get good. Practice makes perfect. You can do that with it. This is a very skill-based game. As I said, there's no randomization. I say that, and I keep thinking about it, and I can't think of anywhere where there's randomization. So, as I said, it is consistent, and I think that's a great option for a game when you want to get better at it. If it was random, or if things are weird, or whatever it may be, the being consistent means that you can pick it up and play it, and it's the same every single time. So that helps when you want to grind it and get better, but you need to grind it and get better a lot. So again, from the parent side of things, the time commitment, that makes it more challenging to be able to, sink that much time into it. However, from a kid, well, they probably have more time than me. I hope. I really hope. That'd be horrible if a kid didn't have more time than me. So one thing, if you're playing with your little one, your little dude or little lady kind of thing, couple ways you can play it, right? There isn't any, there's no multiplayer on this one at all. It's a purely single player game. And what you can do though is that, if my boy is saying, I really, of course, I don't like these backlash levels, Dad. Can you help me? Like, yeah, sure, son. Of course I can help you. You can't get away from the backlash of backlash. So, again, like if he or she doesn't like certain levels because of that vehicle, well, that's kind of easy enough. And the nice thing is that, let's say you've played through it. One of the downsides is on this game, you can only have one save. So when I loaded up a cartridge and I popped it in, I loaded up and I had all the levels unlocked because I had beaten the game. Well, I'm like, I don't want to really do that. Well, you can erase that save, the one save, by holding the start button while starting it. As cool as that is, it means that I obviously lost all my progress previously, and now I have very little because I'm not putting that much effort into it now. But if you, as a parent, decide, hey, I'm going to help him out, we're going to do this backlash level, right? You do that. Next time you go into it, as I had mentioned, you're no longer, quite literally under the nuke of it blowing up. You can be a much more relaxed experience. You can take your time with it, and you can get better. But then if they're like, yeah, I'm going to play it myself, well, the cart has to be erased. If you really, really wanted to, you could probably buy another cartridge, but that's a little excessive. That's a bit much. As I had mentioned, it is on the Microsoft Rare Replay. which is on Game Pass for Microsoft. So, you get your subscription to that. You can play it on... I'm not super familiar with Game Pass. I had it a long time ago. But I think now you get a certain point of it. You can play games on your PC. I think even if you have the highest level, you might be able to play games on your phone, like a cloud version of the games. So with that one, I'm sure there's saves on it, or even if there isn't, at least, you have a different way to play it. So, so again, you can hand off the levels, and once you beat it, then they can go back and get more practice, right? With the levels. So a little bit tricky, but that's one way to get past it. The controls, I would not say are hard. They're pretty straightforward. Sometimes I get a bit mixed up, and it's I think a little bit of the mix of the camera angle and then the stick. And I feel like modern games with this kind of view would control a little differently, because I kept getting thrown off. Actually, you know what it is in this game, the stick does not control your sort of acceleration, deceleration. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. So we'll use Ramdos as an example, is that you accelerate with A and you reverse or brake and reverse with B, and then to do the move, do you press something else? I'm trying to remember. Actually, sorry, for the Ramdos, there's no move, you just drive into things. For side swipe, you press the shoulder button, R. That's how you do it. So you accelerate and then brake, reverse. Nowadays, the stick, if you move the stick to the top left, you'd move in that direction, like a twin stick shooter kind of thing. Single stick on this controller, but yeah, that's the difference. And now if you were to move the stick in a way, you turn, it's like turning the wheel. So yeah, it threw me off a few times for sure, and I'm sure I caused the nuke to go off because of that. But again, it's not like the controls are bad. They're just what is the way to say it? Kind of like a consequence of their time or something like that. It's how it was back when the game was released, which I just realized I never told you guys. It was released in 97, so it was 26 years ago now. Oh, look at that, March 24th. So, a long time ago that it was released, but it was just how it was back then kind of thing. Because there's that inherent timer of the nuke about to blow up right behind you, it's stressful, right? So, again, I make, and I'm sure most people make more mistakes while under stress. So that makes it more challenging for the little one to actually play. But again, as I said, you can beat the level, then they can go back and then, continue on, get more practice, and just keep trying. Again, because it's a cartridge-based game, one of the coolest things is that if it blows up and you die, you get back into level so quickly. It just loads up immediately. There's 0 loading times, right? So super handy. And I said it was on Rare Replay on Xbox Game Pass. I don't know if there's any quality of life features like a save state or rewind. Those would be super handy, especially a rewind. If I go to, with Backlash, because I'll keep harping on it, if I go to do a drift and I just screw it up royally, I'll rewind 3-4 seconds and I'm right where I was. I just try it again kind of thing. So, I don't know if that's on there, but on the other side of this, because the levels are fairly bite-sized, I don't think any level really takes more than a minute and a half at the most for a very casual playthrough to play. Most of them are fairly small. Well, you can pick up and play a couple levels. You can even die a handful of times on each level, and then, play for half an hour, and you've got progress. That's the big thing, right? You play this big, epic RPG, and you watch a cutscene for 15-20 minutes kind of thing, story stuff, as great as that is, well, you're only going to play for 5 or 10 minutes, and then you stop. And you're like, when you're playing a game like that, you want to be able to sit, soak it in, enjoy it, but you don't have the time. This is really nice in that sense. But on the flip side, once again, we'll go back, because the N64 version, which is what I played, you have to be tied to a TV, cables everywhere. It makes it a little more challenging. But as I said, I think you can use a phone with Game Pass and play with a controller. So again, I'm not 100% sure, but I think you get that option with Game Pass. That would make it more versatile. Even with the sense that if I wanted to just put the console to sleep, well, the N64 doesn't have that function. I have to get to a part, save, and then go. Now, granted, every time you finish a level, it does an automatic save. So again, it's not like it's, few and far between, kind of not like old RPGs where you have to get to a save point, and that might be half an hour, 45 minutes from the previous one. You don't want to lose that time. All right, let's give this bad boy a score. We're going to conclude our episode here. This is a weird one for me because I like the game. I don't want to score it poorly just because it's hard. Okay, I'll tell you what I wrote down in my notes, and then I'll chew through it. Let's put it that way. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Got a lot of nostalgia. I have a lot of good memories with this. I remember playing this with my brother, going through those hard levels. Without the nostalgia, I say it would dip down to a 6 or a 5. I think that's actually too low. Now I'm kind of, as I've talked through everything here, I think that's too low for this game. So I'm going to revamp, right? I'm going to give it an 8. And if I didn't have the nostalgia, I would give it a 7. I'm just adjusting my notes, updating them. The game's hard, but it's also, again, skill-based. There's no randomization. So while the game is hard, you can get better at it with enough time. And that's fine. There's nothing really wrong with that. The music, that classic rare greatness, super awesome music. I mean, it's so important for me for a game to have good music. It always it enhances the game that much more when the music is good. And it's funny too because it's actually held up really well. I thought the game looked super fuzzy and slowed down tons. Now again, didn't play super far into it this time around, but and maybe it slows down later on, but I don't think so because nothing really changes from the beginning of the game to the end. It's just the puzzle element of where the buildings are placed and things like that. It's not like there's more buildings on the screen at once. Like some of these buildings are bigger than the screen size itself, so when you blow them up, the particle effects of the explosions are the same whether it's a giant building or a small building kind of thing. So no, I mean, it looks really, really good on here. And maybe the slowness is just my memories of, certain games on the N64, and I'm kind of doing a blanket kind of memory of the rest of the N64 game library being the same. GoldenEye is the number one that was this huge amount of slowdowns, especially in multiplayer with bombs and all that stuff. So, yeah, as I said, I think it held up very well. So, yeah, my revamped rating is an 8 out of 10. I think that's a good score, a good, fair score. And that's going to do it for us on this episode. As always, thank you so much for anyone that's listening out there. I really do love talking about video games, and it's a lot of fun. And if anyone gets any, excitement over it, that's great. Oh, that reminds me. I don't know why I didn't think of this until now. I'm glad I did. I created an Instagram account. I'm going to pop that up on the website. I'll put that in the description. It's just PPVG Podcast on Instagram. You should be able to find it if you search for that or search for Parent Playing Video Games. The first post is one that I just did today about this episode. Just saying, hey, this episode's coming out. I am incredibly... what's the word? Not naive, new. I don't do social media very much, so I wanted to do this in a way so then I can, I put in the description, I say on the podcast, hey, if anyone, has any comments or wants to send me something or like a message or whatever, I say, yeah, go ahead and do that. But no one's been able to because I don't have a medium to do that. So yeah, I decided on Instagram. So did the whole hashtag thing. Hopefully it makes sense. But yeah, it's there. And yeah, if you want to leave a comment on there, I'm going to figure out how to monitor that and, make sure that I can, communicate. I think it'll be, really, really fun actually. Anyway, so yes, sorry. random segue. I'm glad I remembered that. So yeah, again, thank you so much for anyone out there that's listening. We'll start that over. It's been a really fun time chatting about this game, and the N64 I think is a great little console. I'm pretty excited. I have another game on my desk that I'm very tempted to play somewhat soon, maybe in a couple weeks, maybe after Final Fantasy 16, so probably like 2025 or so. Anyway, so that's there. Next episode is in 2 weeks. We will, I guess, see what it's gonna be, as always. And the tradition at PPVG Podcast is our dad joke. Simply put, how does the man in the moon get his hair cut? Eclipse it. Duh. And with that, I would like to say again, thank you once again. And sign it off with the old, give someone a hug and go get a hug, because hugs are great. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.